Hi, Minister. Good to see you.
It's good to be with you.
Thank you very much for making the time.
No problem.
How soon might that transition happen?
I don't know. Mr. Carney obviously is considering all of those scenarios now, meeting with senior officials, the Privy Council. It's a lot to take on all at once, and I know that he'll be doing that with great efficiency, and he has said himself that it won't take long.
How soon do you anticipate an election campaign?
Well, the opposition parties have all said that they intend to take us down at the first opportunity. So that first opportunity would come on the Wednesday following the return of Parliament, the 26th of March. The 26th of March sounds like the date the last date at which an election could be caused.
So, does your party, though, intend to trigger an election before then?
Well, is it really an issue of whether it's the Wednesday, the 26th,
I think
or
it is
3 or
for
4 days?
Canadians. I mean,
3 or 4 days prior to that? It seems pretty clear. Let's agree, Vashia, that an election seems like it's in the offing.
Okay, is your party ready for an election? I was looking at the number of candidates, for example, that were confirmed. I think it's about, less than half of the total number needed. Is your party ready to go to a campaign as soon as, for example, next week?
There's been a lot of interest from candidates across the country. I personally have spoken to dozens of people who are either considering or are already in the process of filing their papers and so on to become candidates for the Liberal Party. So I don't anticipate that would be an issue.
So even if there were a campaign next week, you think the party could be ready for that?
Well, in that hypothetical scenario, in any hypothetical scenario, our job in a minority parliament is to be in more or less a permanent state of readiness, as it is for all parties. So we take that job very seriously. I know the Liberal Party of Canada takes that job very seriously, and so we'd be as ready as possible.
What do you say to Canadians who are right now consumed with the threat of tariffs in what they would mean for our economy and even more largely for our sovereignty, and your party's ability to govern through that?
Yep.
And also run a campaign?
Yes. Well, we have an incredibly experienced team, and that team just got an awful lot more experienced with the addition of our new leader. He's been, of course, battle-tested through the great financial crisis, through the Brexit crisis, through an entire career, really, of navigating some of the most tricky public policy, diplomacy-related issues in recent history right around the world. So he and the team that ultimately will form the team that negotiates directly with the United States, I know will stay engaged right through whatever process may be in front of us.
I wanted to ask you about what you just spelled out, essentially that he is well-suited, and I would not want to take away from his resume at all. The Conservatives, though, have argued that, in fact, he can't be trusted to defend Canada's interests against Donald Trump. And they used the example of Brookfield, Brookfield Asset Management, a company whose board he chaired, that ultimately moved their headquarters from Canada to the United States. They utilize that example to kind of put in the window for Canadians their contention, which is that his actions don't match the rhetoric that he used throughout this campaign. How do you respond to that?
You know, Vashi, that's all they have is character assassination. Here you have a leader of the opposition who has spent 20 years in that building, never passed a single bill, has never been on a private sector payroll, has never had a job outside of politics, does not have the makings of a team that can match the kind of team that Mr. Carney can put in front of the United States. But most importantly, Mr. Carney will stand up for Canada, has done so all of his life. Mr. Poilievre shares the values of the very people we're negotiating against.
Then why did Donald Trump say he's not MAGA?
Well, I suspect there were calls made perhaps to have him say that. I don't know.
Do you know that?
I have no idea about that. But what I do know is that when people close their eyes and listen to Mr. Poilievre, what they hear is the intonation, the words, the grievance, the criticism that they hear when they hear MAGA Republicans speak. And I think it brings back sort of bad impressions and bad memories to Canadians every time that they hear those kinds of expressions and that kind of right-wing ideology expressed on the political scene in this country.
Why does it make you MAGA, though, to highlight, for example, that Mark Carney didn't tell the truth immediately when a reporter asked him about his involvement in that decision? And look, again, I know what the company has said about the move, that the jobs stay and the taxes are still paid in Canada, but he didn't answer truthfully the first time. Why is it MAGA to flag that if you're the opposition? Isn't that their
Character
job?
assassination is what they do. You know, these cutesy little names and nicknames and all these sort of whiny complaints that you know, right-wing Republicans make. That's what they're hearing here.
But you're literally saying that for criticizing your party, Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives are MAGA. Isn't that character assassination?
No, what I'm saying is character assassination is the kind of thing that you see coming from the United States, and they've really imported and maybe even perfected that tactic. Mr. Carney's track record is one of creating wealth for this country. He has participated in building large enterprises in Canada that are among the world's best, and at the same time serving this country, whether it be in the Department of Finance or in the Bank of Canada,
then why didn't he tell the truth that way?
serving the United Nations in terms of climate change, or in serving the global banking system that was dealing with its possible collapse following the global financial crisis. Mr. Carney has been battle tested, and I can't think of anyone with a better track record of serving Canadians and serving the public interest and accomplishments that Mr. Carney has.
Then why didn't he tell the truth when he was asked that question?
Mr. Carney has explained many times that though that decision was ratified
by shareholders, but he did have involvement in it.
But it happened after he had departed, and I think all of this has been discussed very transparently.
I wanted to ask you just before we go about sort of building on all of that, less of the back and forth between the Conservatives and in your party, and more of what you mentioned in what we heard a lot from Mark Carney during the campaign about building out Canada so that we aren't in the vulnerable state that we're in right now. Like, what is the action plan for that? Right now, we've got so much to deal with the tariffs. There's a, understandably a Band-Aid approach being taken. But in the short to medium term, what would a Liberal government do now that they haven't already done that perhaps Canadians think they should have?
Well, it would be a focus on the country's prosperity and the country's growth. We know that we have to diversify our trade markets. Some of that work has begun. More has to be done. And underpinning that work has to be trade-enhancing infrastructure, things like ports, things like railways.
Pipelines?
Energy infrastructure, for sure, needs to be considered. Energy infrastructure of all kinds. Energy is
Why don't
energy.
you want to say the word? What does that mean?
Well, of course, pipelines are going to be discussed, and if a pipeline proposal comes up, pipeline proposal will be absolutely assessed. But the fact is that we need more and better infrastructure in this country. For my part, I'm the Minister of Employment. I've been going around the country saying we need more skilled tradespeople in this country. We need more vocational education. We need people to enter the skilled trades because we have such a grand project to undertake as a country where we're going to be building this foundation of our future prosperity, which is, again, transportation infrastructure, port infrastructure. And we have pension funds in this country who want places to invest too. Some of the world's greatest pension funds who have assets that they would like to deploy in Canada to build these kinds of pieces of infrastructure that, again, will create the prosperity for future generations.
I have just a minute left, and I want to ask you, to Canadians who are watching tonight, who might listen to what you just spelled out and ask, why didn't you do any of it before? I mean, you've done some of it, but why haven't you seized that kind of an economic agenda when you had almost a decade to do so? What do you tell them?
Well, a pipeline did get built. The TMX pipeline did get built. There are LNG plants being built that will...
One big one coming online in 2025.
2 others approved and another in the final stages. So 4, which would in total represent half again our natural gas exports to the United States. So that is wealth building for Canada, market building in terms of those export markets. This is the kind of prosperity that we want to build on and accelerate in this country, and I know that that's going to be Mr. Carney's focus.
Perfectly on time. Minister, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
It's great to be here.